Samuel, chap. 17. Ye martial powers, and all ye tuneful nine, inspire my song, and aid my high design. The dreadful scenes and toils of war I write, the ardent warriors, and the fields of fight you best remember, and you best can sing the acts of heroes. To the vocal string resume the lays with which your sacred lyre did then the poet and the sage inspire. Now front to front the armies were displayed, here Israel ranged, and there the foes arrayed. The hosts on two opposing mountains stood, thick as the foliage of the waving wood. Between them an extensive valley lay, o'er which the gleaming armor poured the day. When from the camp of the Philistine foes, dreadful to view, a mighty warrior rose, in the dire deeds of bleeding battle skilled. The monster stalks the terror of the field. From Gath he sprung, Goliath was his name, of fierce deportment, and gigantic frame. A brazen helmet on his head was placed, a coat of mail his form terrific cracked, the greaves his legs, the targe his shoulders pressed. Dreadful in arms high towering o'er the rest, a spear he proudly waved, whose iron head, strange to relate, 600 shekels weighed. He strode along, and shook the ample field, while Phoebus blazed refulgent on his shield. Through Jacob's race a chilling horror ran, when thus the huge, enormous chief began, "Say, what the cause that in this proud array you set your battle in the face of day? One hero find in all your vaunting train, then see who loses, and who wins the plain. For he who wins, in triumph may demand perpetual service from the vanquished land. Your armies I defy, your force despise, by far inferior in Philistia's eyes. Produce a man, and let us try the fight, decide the contest, and the victor's right." Thus challenged he, all Israel stood amazed, and every chief in consternation gauzed. But Jesse's son in youthful bloom appears, and warlike courage far beyond his years. He left the folds, he left the flowery meads, and soft recesses of the sylvan shades. Now Israel's monarch, and his troops arise, with peals of shouts ascending to the skies. In Elah's vale the scene of combat lies. When the fair morning blushed with orient red, what David's fire enjoined the sun obeyed, and swift of foot towards the trench he came, where glowed each bosom with the martial flame. He leaves his carriage to another's care, and runs to greet his brethren of the war. While yet they spake the giant chief arose, repeats the challenge, and insults his foes. Struck with the sound, and trembling at the view, affrighted Israel from its post withdrew. "Observe ye this tremendous foe," they cried, "who in proud vaunts our armies hath defied. Whoever lays him prostrate on the plain, freedom in Israel for his house shall gain, and on him wealth unknown the king will pour, and give his royal daughter for his dower." Then Jesse's youngest hope, "My brethren say, what shall be done for him who takes away reproach from Jacob, who destroys the chief, and puts a period to his country's grief? He vaunts the honors of his arms abroad, and scorns the armies of the living God." Thus spoke the youth. Attentive people aid the wondrous hero, and again replied, "Such the rewards our monarch will bestow, on him who conquers, and destroys his foe." Eliab heard, and kindled into ire to hear his shepherd brother thus inquire, and thus begun, "What errand brought thee? Say, who keeps thy flock? Or does it go astray? I know the base ambition of thine heart, but back in safety from the field depart." Eliab thus to Jesse's youngest heir, expressed his wrath in accents most severe, when to his brother mildly he replied, "What have I done? Or what the cause to chide?" The words were told before the king, who sent for the young hero to his royal tent. Before the monarch dauntless he began, "For this Philistine fail no heart of man, I'll take the veil, and with a giant fight. I dread not all his boasts, nor all his might." When thus the king, "Darst thou a stripling go, and venture combat with so great a foe? Who all his days has been inured to fight, and made its deeds his study and delight. Battles and bloodshed brought the monster forth, and clouds and whirlwinds ushered in his birth. When David thus, I kept the fleecy care, and out there rushed a lion and a bear. A tender lamb the hungry lion took, and with no other weapon than my crook-bill I pursued, and chased him o'er the field, the prey delivered, and the felon killed. As thus the lion and the bear I slew, so shall Goliath fall, and all his crew. The God, who saved me from these beasts of prey, by me this monster in the dust shall lay. So David spoke. The wondering king replied, Go thou with heaven and victory on thy side, this coat of mail, this sword gird on, he said, and placed a mighty helmet on his head. The coat, the sword, the helm he laid aside, nor chose to venture with those arms untrayed, then took his staff, and to the neighboring brook instant he ran, and thence 5 pebbles took. Meantime descended to Philistia's son a radiant cherub, and he thus begun, Goliath, well thou knowst thou hast defied yon Hebrew armies, and their God denied, rebellious wretch. Audacious worm, forbear, nor tempt the vengeance of their God too far. Them, who with his omnipotence contend, no eye shall pity, and no arm defend. Proud as thou art, in short-lived glory great, I come to tell thee thine approaching fate. Regard my words. The judge of all the gods, beneath whose steps the towering mountain nods, will give thine armies to the savage brood, that cut the liquid air, or range the wood. Thee too a well-aimed pebble shall destroy, and thou shalt perish by a beardless boy, such is the mandate from the realms above, and should I try the vengeance to remove, myself a rebel to my king would prove. Goliath say, shall grace to him be shown, who dares heaven's monarch, and insults his throne. Your words are lost on me, the giant cries, while fear and wrath contended in his eyes, when thus the messenger from heaven replies, Provoke no more Jehovah's awful hand to hurl its vengeance on thy guilty land. He grasps the thunder, and, he wings the storm, servants their sovereign's orders to perform. The angel spoke, and turned his eyes away, adding new radiance to the rising day. Now David comes, the fatal stones demand his left, the staff engaged his better hand. The giant moved, and from his towering height surveyed the stripling, and disdained the fight, and thus began, Am I a dog with thee? Bring'st thou no armor, but a staff to me? The gods on thee their volleyed curses pour, and beasts and birds of prey thy flesh devour. David undaunted thus, Thy spear and shield shall no protection to thy body yield. Jehovah's name, no other arms I bear, I ask no other in this glorious war. Today the Lord of hosts to me will give victory, today thy doom thou shalt receive, the fate you threaten shall your own become, and beasts shall be your animated tomb, that all the earth's inhabitants may know that there's a God, who governs all below. This great assembly too shall witness stand, that needs nor sword, nor spear, Almighty's hand, the battle his, the conquest he bestows, and to our power consigns our hated foes. Thus David spoke, Goliath heard and came to meet the hero in the field of fame. Fatal meeting to thy troops and thee, but thou wast deaf to the divine decree. Young David meets thee not in vain, 'tis thine to perish on ensanguined plain. And now the youth the forceful pebble slung Philistia trembled as it whizzed along in his dread forehead, where the helmet ends, just o'er the brows the well-aimed stone descends, it pierced the skull, and shattered all the brain. Prone on his face he tumbled to the plain. Goliath's fall no smaller terror yields than riving thunders in aerial fields. The soul still lingered in its loved abode, till conquering David o'er the giant strode. Goliath's sword then laid its master dead, and from the body hewed the ghastly head. The blood in gushing torrents drenched the plains, the soul found passage through the spouting veins. And now aloud illustrious victor said, Where are your boastings now, your champions dead? Scarce had he spoke, when the Philistines fled, but fled in vain. The conqueror swift pursued. What scenes of slaughter, and what seas of blood their soul thy thousands grasped. Empurpled sand in pangs of death the conquest of thine hand, and David there were thy 10,000s laid. Thus Israel's damsels musically played. Near Gath and Edron many and hero lay, breathed out their souls, and cursed the light of day. Their fury, quenched by death, no longer burns, and David with Goliath's head returns, to Salem brought, but in his tent he placed the load of armor which the giant cracked. His monarch saw him coming from the war, and thus demanded of the son of Ner, Say, who is this amazing youth? He cried, when thus the leader of the host replied, As lives thy soul I know not whence he sprung, so great in prowess though in years so young. Inquire whose son is he. The sovereign said, Before whose conquering arm Philistia fled. Before the king behold the stripling stand, Goliath's head depending from his hand. To him the king, say of what martial line art thou, young hero, and what sire was thine? He humbly thus, the son of Jesse I came the glories of the field to try. Small is my tribe, but valiant in the fight, small is my city, but thy royal right. Then take the promised gifts, the monarch cried, conferring riches and the royal bride, knit to my soul forever thou remain with me, nor quit my regal roof again.